Welcome. Take a deep breath and settle into a quiet place, far removed from the rush of modern life. Tonight, we will journey back to the ancient Roman Empire, but not to the roaring crowds of the Colosseum or the chariots thundering through Circus Maximus. No, this story is slower, softer, and stranger. We'll start in the warm, echoing chambers of a Roman bathhouse, where steam fogs the air and conversations drift like mist. Then, we'll step quietly into the private life of one of Rome's most infamous emperors, explore the still-buried secrets of a city frozen in ash, and finish our night at a luxurious Roman banquet, where reclining while eating was not only allowed, but expected. This is history told gently. Let your thoughts drift, your breathing slow, and imagine yourself in another world, where even something as simple as washing was a public ritual layered with rules, tools, and texture. Let's begin with the strange and not so sanitary rituals of getting clean in ancient Rome. Why you wouldn't enjoy a Roman bath? Imagine waking in a small apartment, the kind Roman citizens called an insula, a multi-story block crowded with neighbors, noisy goats, and the scent of last night's cooking smoke still hanging in the air. There's no private bathroom, not even a tap. If you want to wash, you'll need to visit the thermae, the public baths. You slip on your tunic, perhaps still damp from the previous day's heat, and head into the street. It's noisy, uneven, and busy. Your sandals crunch over the gravel. Finally, after winding through alleys and avoiding speeding carts, you reach the baths. You pay a small coin to enter. Inside, everything echoes. The building is enormous, grand, and full of steam. The stone floors are slightly slippery. The air smells of sweat, oil, smoke, and faintly, of sulfur from the heating system underneath. You undress in the appetitorium, the changing room, and hand your clothes to an attendant, if you're lucky enough to afford one. Otherwise, you tuck them into a wall recess and hope no one steals them. Theft was a constant concern. You're now naked, like everyone else here. There's no soap. Instead, you cover yourself in olive oil, mixed with ash or sometimes sand. It's thick, slippery, smells faintly herbal. Then, a strigil, a curved bronze scraper, is used to scrape the oil, sweat, and dirt from your skin. It's not comfortable. In fact, it can be slightly painful, especially if the strigil is dull or your skin is sunburned. And this isn't a private ritual. People talk while scraping themselves or each other. There's laughing, political discussions, gossip, sometimes arguments. Then it's into the caldron, the hot room. It's humid. So humid that the air feels heavy in your lungs. You sit on warm stone benches and sweat profusely. Next comes the tepidarium, a warm transition room ... And then the frigidarium, the cold plunge. You step into icy water. The shock is sharp. You try not to gasp, but everyone does. Sometimes, bathers use a communal sponge on a stick, called a tersorium, to clean after using the shared toilets. These are rinsed in a bucket of vinegar and reused. Often, no one talks about it, but everyone knows. The whole experience is strangely refreshing and strangely exhausting. By the end, you're warm, clean, in a Roman way, and ready to return to your day. But you're also aware that everything about this experience, the shared oil, the reused tools, the heated walls, would feel almost alien to modern standards of cleanliness. Still, for a Roman, it was routine, an expected part of life, one that brought the entire community together, no matter how strange it might seem now. And now, as the heat fades, we turn our attention from the bathhouse to the palace, and the life of an emperor who may have bathed too often, and not always in olive oil. Nero, the emperor who fiddled. Now imagine leaving behind the murmur of the bathhouse and walking through the colonnaded marble halls of a palace that stretches across the heart of Imperial Rome. The air here is different, still warm, but quieter. perfumed. You might hear the soft pluck of a lyre, or the low humming voice of someone rehearsing lines from a Greek tragedy. This is the world of Emperor Nero. Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus. Germanicus, his full imperial name, came to power in 54 CE. He was only 16 years old. The empire was already vast and expectations were heavy. But Nero had different ambitions. He didn't dream of conquest. He dreamed of performance. He fancied himself a poet, a singer, an actor. He took lessons, practiced scales, wrote verses. Not everyone appreciated this. Many in the Senate and even his own advisors found it deeply unsettling. Emperors were supposed to lead armies, not recite Homer in a silk robe. But Nero didn't care. He constructed private theaters, hosted poetry contests, invited the elite of Rome to listen to his lyre playing often for hours. And you did not leave before the end, even if the performance stretched into the night. Sometimes, as stories go, people pretended to faint just for an excuse to be carried out. And then, in July of 64 CE, fire came to Rome. It began in the merchant district. It burned for 9 days. The city of stone and wood turned to ash. Rumors spread quickly that Nero himself had started it, so he could rebuild the city in his own image. Some even said he stood atop a tower and played his instrument as the city burned beneath him. Did he? Historians now think not. Nero wasn't even in Rome when the fire started, and the fiddle hadn't even been invented. What he may have played was a cithara, an ancient kind of lyre, and even that is uncertain. Still, Nero leaned into the drama. He ordered a new palace to be built on the ruins. The Domus Aurea, the Golden House, with ceilings that dripped pearls, walls inlaid with gold, and a rotating dining room that mimicked the heavens. But the beauty hid shadows. Nero began purging his enemies. His mother, Agrippina, who had once secured his place on the throne, was murdered on his orders. So were advisors, senators, even poets, all removed in quiet, precise ways. And then there were the Christians. Nero blamed them for the fire, rounded them up, executed many, often in public. The Senate, once wary, became afraid. Rebellions stirred in distant provinces. Nero's support collapsed. By 68 CE, he fled Rome, alone, hunted, in the quiet of a borrowed villa, surrounded by only a few loyal servants. He took his own life. His final words, as they are remembered: "What an artist dies in me." He was 30 years old. Today, Nero remains a figure of contradiction. A lover of music who ruled by fear. A young man in a dangerous role who dreamed of applause. And perhaps, somewhere in those dreams, we see a boy, not a tyrant longing for beauty in a brutal world. Now, let us turn from one enigma to another ... and step into a city caught forever in a moment, beneath layers of ash and silence. Pompeii's forgotten rooms, the city sleeps. Not in peace, but in stillness, preserved. Beneath meters of ash and time, Pompeii remains as it was on that late summer day in 79 CE, when Mount Vesuvius rose into the sky, darkened the sun, and rained fire upon the world below. Much has been said of Pompeii's tragic end. But tonight, let's explore what came before the silence through rooms rarely seen and lives quietly lived. Most visitors know the brothel frescoes, the grand villas, the haunting casts of the dead. But just beyond those popular images lie hundreds of smaller spaces, shops, shrines, storage rooms, narrow kitchens, each one still holding the texture of ancient life. Imagine stepping into one such home. Not grand, not poor, just ordinary. The floor is tiled in warm black and white mosaics, simple geometric patterns. The walls are colored red and ochre. Time has dulled the paint, but you can still see the outline of a small garden scene. A bird perched on a vine, a fountain spilling water that no longer flows. The kitchen is tiny, a stone hearth, a few pots. Ash still clings to the surfaces. There's no chimney smoke would have filled the room, stinging the eyes. Cooking was laborious. Bread was often bought from the communal bakery. There is a back room, a space with no windows. Inside, a single low bed, a wooden box that may have held clothes, and the faint impression of a woven basket. In another corner of town, archaeologists discovered a small room without decoration. It had no formal doorway, just a narrow passage. Inside were 3 child-sized beds made of rope and wood. Along the wall, tools, a cart, chains. This was not a bedroom. It was a storage room converted for sleep, likely for enslaved workers or indentured laborers. No decoration, no comfort, just necessity. Then there are the shrines. Not the famous temples, but Lauraria household altars painted in niches by the door. Little figures of household gods Laras stand watch over the family. Some are brightly painted, with snakes curled protectively at their feet. Offerings of fruit and wine would have once been left there, daily, in quiet reverence. One of the most haunting discoveries is a loaf of bread, carbonized, still whole, found in a baker's oven. Round with scored edges. It even had a maker's stamp. Baked the morning of the eruption and never claimed. That bread was meant to be sold, eaten, shared with family. Instead, it sat in darkness for almost 2,000 years. Pompeii is often remembered for its final day. But within its forgotten rooms lies its true legacy. The small routines, the unnoticed gestures, the quiet hopes that filled each wall and floor with life. As the ash fell, it preserved not just the city, but a moment. Not the heroic or the famous, but the ordinary. Now, with the dust still settled around us, we leave the humble homes and step upward into another part of Roman life. A place of luxury, laughter, and excess where banquets stretched late into the night, and the air was thick with spice and spectacle. Dinner with the patricians. Let the ashes of Pompeii fall gently behind us. And now picture candlelight flickering on polished marble, the scent of myrrh curling in the air, and the rustle of silk robes as guests arrive slowly, ceremoniously. You are entering the dullness of a Roman patrician. A home not just of comfort, but of power. This is the upper class Rome's elite, and tonight, you are here for dinner. Not at a table, not on a chair. You recline. This is the cena, the Roman evening meal. A social ritual as much as a dining one. Guests are arranged by status. The closer you are to the host, the more important you are. You lie on cushioned couches arranged in a U-shape, leaning on your left elbow. Your right hand is free to reach for food, to gesture, to raise a goblet. The food is not what you might expect. The first course gestatio might include olives marinated in honey and vinegar, small dormice, fattened with nuts, served on lettuce leaves, eggs topped with fermented fish sauce, known as garum. The taste is sharp, salty, pungent. It's the flavor of empire. Then comes the prima mensa, the main course. Whole roasted peacocks, their feathers reattached for decoration. Boiled ostrich, seasoned with pepper and cumin. Fresh seafood brought in from the coast that morning, even if it meant traveling miles in packed crates of ice. The wine flows steadily. Always diluted with water drinking, its straight is considered barbaric. The wine is spiced, sometimes with saffron or even resin. Cups are refilled constantly by quiet-footed servants, trained to appear invisible. Conversations swirl politics, poetry, rumors from the Senate, whispers of scandal. And all around, entertainment. A musician plucks strings on a cithara. A dancer moves slowly across the marble floor. A hired storyteller recites a myth with practiced pauses. Laughter reaches politely, never too loud. This is elegance. But behind every smile, there is calculation. Every guest is aware of their rank, their role, their ambition. Then comes the secunda mensa dessert, figs drizzled with wine syrup, candied dates stuffed with nuts, small honey cakes shaped like flowers, all served delicately, almost ceremonially. And finally, as the night grows late, the candles begin to flicker low. Some guests doze lightly where they recline. Others linger in quiet conversation. The host offers a final toast, and the evening fades. There is no rush, no sense of ending. In the domus of the Roman elite, time stretches like the silk hanging from the windows, slow, heavy, fragrant with wealth. But outside, in the darker streets of Rome, the baker prepares dough for the morning. The bathhouse custodian rakes ashes from the furnace, and the city turns again toward its ordinary rhythm. And now, as we leave the bathhouse, the palace, the buried city, and the elegant dining couch, let the noise of ancient Rome fade into a soft hush. What remains is not the grandeur, nor the ruin, but the quiet patterns of daily life. Washing, eating, working, resting. Things not so different from now, just done with oil instead of soap, with bronze instead of glass, and by firelight instead of electric glow. Close your eyes, if you haven't already. Let the dust settle, the candles flicker out, and the whispers of history drift gently into silence. Good night, traveler, and may your dreams be gentler than a Roman strigil.